Welcome everyone to Haven of Horror. I am Subject, and I have Torgo with me once again, doing just an off-the-cuff review. Not part of any show or anything, but a new movie did drop. So I have one question for you, Torgo. Did you open the box?
I did not open the box. It's still at the lament configuration for me personally.
You opened the box. We came.
That is true,
We're.
yeah.
I can't close the box.
Oh no, come on.
So we're here not to talk about the original Hellraiser because we have already done that. That was the only, I think, one of the only times we had a full show of me, Austin, Nick back then, or shit, what did I call him?
Is Milton was his
Milton.
name. Yeah.
Milton, I forgot. And Doolittle. I think that's the only time we've had four people on our
Is that the
show.
only time?
I think so. I could
Hmm.
be wrong.
Yeah, I remember when you reviewed that, but I can't think of another time where it was all four of those guys.
Yeah. So we're here to talk about the long-awaited reboot of Hellraiser. And I don't know if you know this, but this goes back. I don't know if it's the same project, but this goes back to the late 2000s, where Clive
Okay.
Barker was talking about doing just a shot-for-shot remake of the original, and he even wanted to get Doug
Oh.
Bradley back.
Yeah, I didn't know this project was that old. That's
Yeah, I
interesting.
remember hearing rumors about this for a long time, and it was one of those movies where it's like, I kind of wanted it to happen, even though I do love the original, as long as they got Doug Bradley back, because I think he could still do it.
Mhm.
Um, and then stuff happened, and now we have this thing.
This
Um,
this reboot, soft reboot uh sequel thing.
do you agree with me on this? Other than Pinhead or the Hell Priestess, this could almost just be like a decades later sequel.
Yeah, I mean, is there anything that contradicts that first movie?
Uh, just some of
Because
the
I
lore
can't think of.
stuff, but that wouldn't.
Okay.
You could almost say that's more of just like an addition or retcon.
Yeah.
And I have questions about some of that. I
Yeah,
liked
I
some
mean,
of it, but I think some of it they overcomplicate.
yeah. Well, and obviously the main thing that would contradict that first movie is Pinhead, which may that's probably a good place to start is talking about Pinhead. What did you think of her in this movie?
She is amazing. I have one complaint. There's shots later in the movie where she's in like full light, and this
Yeah.
costume looks atrocious.
Yeah. It doesn't look they look better when they're shrouded in darkness. I'd say like all the Cenobites do. But
So can I
especially
mention?
Pinhead.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying, especially Pinhead looks really weird, like you said, when she's out in the light.
Can I mention the weirdest thing that just made me really happy with this movie? They brought
Sure.
my boy the Chatterer back.
Oh yeah, yeah, the one with the teeth.
Yeah, he's not in like any of the sequels except two, I think.
Okay. Oh yeah, so I should probably say I've just seen the first movie.
I've seen the
I haven't
first
read.
nine.
Yeah, I've never read the original Clive Barker story. I've only all my experience with Hellraisers from that first movie, which is excellent. I love that movie. Um,
So
so I was looking forward to this. Uh, but I have to say, I am slightly disappointed with how it turned out.
well, hold on, because we are getting ahead of ourselves.
Okay.
First, let's summarize the film. So this is the story of Riley, a young woman struggling with a severe drug addiction, whose brother goes missing after being stabbed by the box.
Yeah.
And the first half is like her trying to find him or trying to find a way to bring him back. And then the second half is more just survival against the Cenobites. Would
Yeah.
that is that how? And things happen in between.
Yeah. See, it's a
So
pretty cut and dry. plot for a movie that's around 2 hours long.
I think I agree with reviewers that this did not need to be 2 hours.
Yeah, no, I was really feeling. I was checking my watch like halfway through the movie.
And I don't know. Tell me if you agree with this, because we talked. We at least gave our. I gave my opinion on Pinhead or the Hell Priestess. Um,
Yeah.
but before I get into what I was going to ask you, what did you think of the priest?
I thought she was great. I think that actress, her name escapes me at the moment, but she's
Jamie
awesome.
Clayton.
Yeah, she does a great job. She's I don't know, probably just as good, or I'd say, as Bradley. Um, but I haven't seen the other movies to compare, fully with that. But I think she leaves just as much of an impression when you're just comparing it to that first movie.
That's fair, and I do have to admit some bias because his portrayal of Pinhead is one of my favorite like movie monsters ever. I think she's really good with the asterisk that she's never going to be as good as Doug Bradley. I'm sorry, that's
Yeah,
just the
yeah.
way it is.
I mean, it's a lot to live up to, you
Yeah.
know.
So
One movie versus like 9 movies or something like that.
yeah. So let me. So I'm going to start at the very beginning with with the pacing or with the length problem of this movie. Would you agree with me? We don't need that whole opening scene.
Um, no, I think you do need the opening scene
Do you?
because it ties into that whole really not really the main villain, but like that
But
guy, the
here's
collector guy.
but here's why I
He's
say this because you have that scene later where they're doing research and it gives you his backstory about how he's this weird antiques collector and he went missing.
Yeah, well, I think I mean, yeah, you would have that, but I think it would be more interesting to just see that visually than just like here's an exposition dump of who this guy is.
And I don't entirely disagree with you, but I was just thinking, wouldn't it have been better if we figured it out as the character did, instead of having to
Yeah,
wait for the character to catch up to us?
yeah, maybe. I don't know. You could have approached it in a different way. I think that we both ultimately agree that this movie is too long and something does. I can't exactly put my finger on what I would cut out at this moment because I just watched it. I haven't thought
Personally,
about it for a long time.
yeah, and all of this is based on a first viewing. Let's just put that disclaimer out now.
Hmm.
Um, but most of my cuts would be to the first half of this film. I think the
Yeah.
first half of this film is a generic horror remake, and I was getting strong Evil Dead 2013 vibes from the first half, and I like that movie.
It's a pretty good
But I like
comparison.
this movie. I like this movie too. But that first half reminded me a lot of Evil Dead 2013, right into the drug addicted
Yeah.
sister and the brother who's trying to help her.
Yeah, so like you spend a lot of time with these characters and I'm sorry,
They're not good.
they're not especially interesting and they're not especially well acted.
See,
Um
I don't
it,
agree with that. I think the main girl is very good. I
I
just
think
don't think
she's
she's
good.
well written.
I think she's good. Some of the supporting cast is a little eh.
That's fine. They're just there
Um
to get chains in them.
yeah. Well, I mean, you have the boyfriend character who ends up being kind of important because he's like
I
working
thought that was kind
for
of
the
fun.
collector guy.
I thought that was kind of
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah, did you see that twist coming?
No.
Yeah, I didn't see it coming either, so
Okay.
it was kind of interesting.
So I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit since you skipped to the twist, which is fine. My biggest shock of this is how much they pull from Hellraiser 2.
Oh, okay.
Because, okay,
So
slight spoilers for Hellraiser 2 if you don't care.
I don't it's
So the
it's fine.
whole plot of Hellraiser 2 is that Kirsty's in this insane asylum, right? Or this mental institution. And this doctor there knows about the box. And he uses her and this other girl to get open the box and get into the Cenobite dimension so he can become the Leviathan.
Oh, okay.
Sound familiar?
Yeah, that's kind of what the collector guy is trying to do here.
The collector is just the doctor from Hellraiser 2. And there's this one shot. I don't know if you noticed this, but it like zooms out and there's this like giant maze. Do you know what I'm talking about? It
Yeah.
looks almost identical to a shot from Hellraiser 2.
Oh, okay.
So
I'd have to look at that side by side.
yeah, I would really recommend watching Hellraiser 2 after seeing this movie. I don't love Hellraiser 2 as much as most people. But this okay. So I mentioned before we started, I didn't like the first half. I didn't hate it, but I didn't like it.
Mhm.
The second half is the movie that I came to see. That is the half
Really?
that feels like it was written by Clive Barker.
Hmm.
Because that's where you get all the, you get the body horror, you get the kind of philosophizing from priest. You get more into the Leviathan and all the supernatural, whereas the first half feels like it was written by the people who wrote Evil Dead. So it's like two movies in one, and I wanted the other movie,
I
but the
see what
second
you
half
mean.
is.
It's strange. I see what you mean, but like I don't know what it is. It seems like I had a completely different experience because I was checked out by the time the second half rolled around. But I don't
That's
know if that's just
fascinating.
the pacing or like the quality of one
Well, I
half
think some of
compared
it
to
is the
the other half.
pacing, because the first half is just like they go somewhere to investigate. Somebody gets stabbed by the box.
Yeah.
The, we get vague shots of the Cenobites, which I did appreciate because that was something that me and Austin talked about. We were worried they'd over rely on the Cenobites,
They
and
use
they
them
really
for,
don't.
yeah, they use them sparingly, just like the first movie.
I'd argue they use them about the same way that the second movie does, the original does.
Mhm.
It's all in the back half.
That's what I appreciated. Yeah, they really
Mm-hmm.
save a lot of the like stuff with Pinhead and all the like speeches and stuff till the second half of the movie.
This may make me sound like a bit of a sadist, but I also kind of appreciated how they lingered on some of the kill scenes. Like the one
Oh
scene with
yeah,
that girl, with that woman.
with the
Uh,
pin going through her neck.
yes, the way they linger on that, and like it's like they're actually torturing her.
No, that made me cringe. Yeah, no, that's a good scene.
If there's one thing I think that this movie has over the original, these because this plot is more, I want to say vague. Like this isn't a super focused plot. You get more
Yeah,
of the Cenobites that are explorers of pain and pleasure versus the
yeah,
original. They're very focused on, we want Kirsty, now we want Frank.
yeah. It does explore some of the similar themes, obviously, but like this, they kind of go further in some areas with the gore. Um, Not, I mean, it's only really in a couple scenes though, because you have that scene and in a few others, but like, it's not like it did feel at some points like they were holding back a little bit. Um,
Well, and I do wonder with the nature of something like Hellraiser, if they were still kind of like, well, we have to trim it down.
Maybe, yeah.
But I also don't know if streaming has to worry about that.
It's not, it's an issue I don't know a whole lot about, but I don't know,
So
because now that I think about it, comparing it to the original it does go pretty far with some of the like sadistic, um, gory, like
it
tortury
does,
parts.
but really in that first one, the only big one is just the Frank scene, right?
Yeah,
And I would argue
yeah, I
like, and
know.
that is intense. Don't get me wrong, and it's the original movie is a masterpiece. But I think this is able to go places like the original doesn't have the nail going through the throat or like watching the chains kind of tug on them a little bit just to get them to scream. Like they
Yeah,
actually feel sadistic.
yeah, and I mean like that doesn't make you sound like a sadist because that's kind of what a Hellraiser movie should do. It's
Yeah.
this this whole like series is about the idea of like torture
No, no, no.
and like
The first
getting
two are about
pleasure.
that. The rest of them are
Well,
just slasher movies.
the ones I've seen. The first movie is about, the contrast between pain and pleasure and just the idea of like uh torture uh being pleasurable and all that.
Okay, so let's talk about the mythology because that's what's been bugging me the most.
Mhm.
I love a lot of I love the different forms of the box. That feels very Clive Barkerish. And this is okay. This is probably a nitpick, and feel free to tell me if it is. I don't understand the knife in the blade in the box, and I also don't understand why the Cenobites are played like they're Freddy Krueger, where you like go to sleep and wake up in the Cenobite reality.
Um,
Did you notice that?
I didn't
Like
I didn't
everyone
immediately
gets
think of Freddy.
groggy when they get
Yeah.
stabbed, and then they're the only ones that can see the
Yeah.
Cenobites.
I don't know. I think that kind of tracked with the original movie. Um, Not the whole like knife thing, but it is almost kind of like going into another like world. Or I don't know if anyone fell asleep in the first movie when they went
Well,
over to
no,
the Cenobite world.
because
Mhm.
in the original nobody goes to the Cenobite world except for that one scene where the wall opens up and she just
Yeah,
goes through
in the
it.
hospital.
The Cenobites clearly come into our world and can be seen by others.
That's true, yeah.
Oh, and I should also
Yeah.
note that I watched the original last night, so it's like very fresh in my brain.
Yeah, I watched it again a few weeks ago. It should be more fresh in my brain than it is, but
Because in that one, you
um
just open the box and the chains come out, or the Cenobites come out.
yeah, now they kind of add more to it with the whole knife coming out and stabbing you, which I guess that if that happens, that means the Cenobites are targeting you. What part
Unless
about
they're
that was
not.
confusing to you though?
Okay, so it makes sense in theory, right? But
Hmm.
I guess it's more of just a lot. I don't understand why it has to be there to begin with,
Okay.
and they're inconsistent with how the targeting works. Because all of a sudden, the Hell Priest tells the main character, either we take you, or you choose people for us to take.
Oh, that's right, because she does get stabbed at one point, and then they just go off and
They just leave her be.
they even take one of the Cenobites that
Yeah,
gets
because
stabbed.
they stabbed the Cenobite.
Yeah,
They stabbed my boy. It was
they
the
stabbed the
chatter.
yeah.
Which I actually
Um,
liked that part because I like that they don't care. Like as long as they get to do what they want to do, like
yeah.
who
As long
cares?
as they have a victim.
But I just feel like the whole thing with the knife and being marked overcomplicates the lore. And then you introduce things like
Yeah.
they she opens the box for the first time and like the chains like burst out of her chest and
Mhm.
they're like you can pick either we take you or you give us other people to take in your place. And then they repeat that when the one of the Cenobites tricks her into being marked. Either we take you or you give us someone else.
Mhm. Yeah. I guess they changed it just so the scheme with the collector could work because his whole deal is that like he has the box, but he is gathering victims so he can gain more power.
But
Um,
even then, that would still work without the whole knife and sleep thing, because he's just having other people open it for him.
that's true. Yeah, he can just give them the box and they'll solve the puzzle.
Although that also infuriated me because Hellraiser 2 does the exact same thing and they have the perfect response for it. The Cenobites can read your intentions. If you are tricked into opening the box in Hellraiser 2, they will not come for you because you did not know what you were getting into. They will instead come for the person that tricked you into opening the box.
Okay, yeah. That's definitely like going off the first movie with Kirsty opening the box, and then she's like,
Well,
"No,
and yeah,
take
to
Frank
be
instead."
well, okay, yeah, and it's been a while since I've watched two. If that's not exactly how it is, let us know in the comments. But I know because there's a plot point where this girl who's like really good at puzzles is convinced to open the box, but because she did not have the intent to open the box for herself, the Cenobites don't take her.
Okay. Yeah, well, seems like they're drawing on the other movies, and then I don't know, maybe even the original story, but
and
I
I'm
haven't
not
read that.
and I'm not saying for anyone listening once this is uploaded, I am not saying that has to be exactly like the original, but I also don't think it makes sense. And
It's
you
just
over
inconsistent rules.
inconsistent rules and adding too many rules. I
Yeah,
would argue the only rule that you needed to add was just the different forms of the box.
yeah, and I mean that was interesting enough already. I do agree with you on that. It does get a little weird, and like they're kind of breaking their own rules with the whole knife thing. Um, but like I don't know. I don't think about it too hard.
And I will say, as someone who has read the book, this is not the book at all. The book is the first movie, which is fine. I
Okay.
respect the hell out of them for making this into a more original story. I just wish the first half had been a little more original, and
Yeah. Oh, and
maybe
for some reason, I was under the impression that Barker wrote this movie, and he didn't. It was some other people, and I think even David S. Goyer co-wrote this movie,
he has a
which
story
I
credit.
didn't, or just a story credit. Okay.
Yeah, the screenplay was by Ben Collins and Luke. I'm not gonna pretend that I know how to say that last name.
Okay.
Oh, they wrote the Night House, which was pretty good. They're
Oh
known
yeah, yeah,
collaborators of this director.
yeah. Which I haven't seen, but I heard good things about.
It's pretty good. Um, how did you feel about the directing? Because you notice more about that than I do.
Um, it all throughout, it looks nice. Like it's a nice looking movie. There was nothing that really stood out. Um, like there was no like choices that really stood out to me of like, oh, that was an interesting choice that they made. Um, so it looks all right.
I had two moments where I was just like, hmm. The first is when they mention it by the Lamont configuration. Because I don't know if you knew this, but the fish. Okay, actually, I don't know if it's official, but the widely accepted official term for the box in the original canon is the Lament configuration.
Yeah.
And I was like, that is not the Lament configuration. It's just the box. Just don't do that.
Oh, okay.
But the big one that took me out, and I don't know if you noticed this, it's the only. I hate to use this term because I don't think it's as a big deal as most people, but it did take me out in this specific instance. There's one member berry in this whole movie? Did you notice it?
Is it well there's I noticed a couple. Are you
Oh,
talking
really?
about like dialogue or
Dialogue
something?
specifically. Was there something else that I missed?
So, well, are you thinking of that we have such sights to show you at the end?
Yes. I was like, no, you do not get to say that you do not.
This is kind of throwaway, but there's a part where the boyfriend is like getting a drink for someone, and he's like, "What's your pleasure?" I noticed that.
Oh, I didn't even notice that.
Yeah, it's kind
Huh.
of throwaway, but I was like, ah, he said the thing.
See, I'll give them that one because that sounds like normal dialogue.
Yeah,
Oh, what's your pleasure for a drink? I'm sorry, that's the only line of hers that I could not handle. I
yeah.
could not. It
I
just
didn't have
does
an
not
issue with it.
sound. The original is just so good. Just don't do that.
Oh, see, I think she delivers it pretty well. Like I don't know, I didn't have an issue with her saying that.
I would have to probably watch it again and try to separate like my fanboyism, because that is a fanboy complaint over a critical
Because
complaint.
that's a Pinhead line, so
Yeah.
I'd expect Pinhead to say that,
Well, this isn't Pinhead. This is the priest.
or whatever. Same kind of character.
So the other thing I did notice, Pinhead's design is really cool. I love the little box thing on her throat. The
Yeah,
Chatterer's design was cool. The rest of the Cenobites were just okay. I don't know.
yeah,
None of them were like great. Where's my boy Butterball?
yeah. I thought they looked pretty cool for the most part, but none of them. The two that stood out were the Chatterer and obviously the priest. But like, I don't know. And I thought for the most part, like the CGI in this movie looked pretty good for the budget that they had.
I would agree. Even the one that I didn't think would look good, but it ended up looking good, is when the chains like come out of her chest.
Hmm. Yeah,
Um,
no, that looked good.
let's
Um,
see. How did you feel about the ending?
the very ending with
Very ending.
I I was just kind of ready for the movie to be over at that point, but yeah, it was kind of cool, I guess, to see him turn into a Cenobite.
Well, and it's funny because that's also from Hellraiser 2. The doctor that I mentioned
Oh,
becomes
okay.
like the Leviathan, and
Oh, so
spoilers for Hellraiser 2, but he kills the other Cenobites.
oh, okay. So they really did take a lot from Hellraiser 2, it sounds.
It blew my mind when they reveal that he's still alive, and then they start doing all
Mhm.
the Leviathan stuff. Because at the beginning he mentions a Leviathan, I was like, oh, it's just a throwaway line,
Yeah.
and then it just keeps pulling from Hellraiser 2, and I'm like, is this kind of doing Hellraiser 2 better than Hellraiser 2?
Oh,
And
that's
it kind of
interesting.
is. That second half is anyway.
Yeah, I guess I need to watch that at some point.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but I mean, I don't have a whole lot else to say. Like,
The other
there
thing
are
that
really
did it.
cool things about this movie, but um, some of the stuff with the Cenobites are cool. But most of it's just kind of a generic horror movie,
So I have two
and
things that I want to point out. One
mhm.
is I was really impressed that they had the main character go the route of, I don't want anything from you. I don't know if she earned that, but it was a nice moment in the moment.
Yeah, I was surprised that she didn't try to still get her brother back.
I'm not entirely sure what inspired her to make that choice, which is why I'm not sure if she earned that moment.
Mhm.
But just in the moment, it was a nice little cap off. But I think I'd
Yeah,
have to watch it again to decide if she earned that character growth.
yeah, I'm not sure if she did, to be completely honest.
I'm not sure either. Um, oh, the other thing is I do want to give this movie that opening scene kudos for one thing. Even though I'm still not convinced it needs to be there. It is legitimately tense when he's solving the box because you know what's coming.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, that is pretty cool. And like the chains coming out and lifting him up.
Also, really impressive that they didn't show Pinhead off at all in that scene.
Yeah, no, they saved Pinhead.
I
Uh,
legitimately thought she, they, it. Am I canceled
yeah,
now?
yeah, the video canceled. No, it's probably like they don't even really say. Like I've been using she, her pronouns, but it's probably more like
It's kind
they,
of
them.
ambiguous, right? Like,
Yeah, it's more of like an ambiguous
oh,
kind of thing.
that's the thing we need to talk about. So
Mhm.
obviously in the original, his voice is kind of modulated a little bit. Do you
Yeah.
feel it was overdone in this?
No, I actually thought it was kind of cool. I liked how her voice sounded,
I
or their
agree,
voice
but
sounded.
I wasn't sure.
Yeah. Um, no, and I thought she did a great job.
Yeah. Oh, I gotta send you something after this stream.
Okay.
Because I think they also took from the comics a little bit. I don't know if you know this, but Boom Studios did a comics run of Hellraiser, and it's pretty good.
Okay, no, I'd have to read that at some point.
But
Um,
anyway, I think we're gonna move on to the final rating. Um, I think we kept it as there's obviously going to be spoilers, so hopefully you watched the movie before you watch this. But I'm gonna, despite my issues, I think that second half for me carries it to a 3.5.
okay, that's higher than I expected
I went back
by
and
the way you were
forth.
talking about it.
I went back and forth, and honestly, actually, you know what? Because I have more issues with it after talking with you, I gave it a
Yeah.
3.5 on Letterboxd. I think I'm actually gonna stick with a 3.
Okay. That I'm also doing a 3. So we're right, down the middle on this one.
Yeah, it's on a technical script level, it is the second best Hellraiser to me. People like 2 more than I do. But if I had to be honest, I'd probably put Hellraiser 3 on before this. That one's at least funny bad.
Yeah, whatever entertains you more.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
that one's at least stupid.
I do have to say I am surprised that this after watching this that this debuted with a 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. That
Too.
that's kind of strange. I don't know where
So
that
let me
came
ask
from.
you this because I was thinking about this too. I don't know about you, but for me, I think Prey kind of set my standards a little too high for this one.
Yeah. Um that is a better Hulu original horror movie than this.
Reboot, soft reboot thing.
Yeah, yeah, and then another like reboot-ish installment in a long-running franchise.
Yeah,
Um, but that movie's just way better than this.
yeah. And it makes me sad because I like Hellraiser more than I do Predator. Like I love me some Predator, but I don't know.
Yeah,
So would you watch a sequel to this?
maybe because
Maybe.
I didn't hate this movie.
I didn't
I
hate it
thought it
either.
I thought it was fine, but like I don't know if I'll go back to it that much. I'd definitely go back to the first one.
I'm gonna
I'll
be
have to
completely
watch.
honest with you. I will
Yeah,
YouTube scenes from this movie before I sit through the whole 2 hours
you know what? That's fair. Yeah, you
again.
can watch like the ending again.
I
Um,
watched the second half of the movie on YouTube. That's the movie that I
yeah.
want to see.
Or just like go to Hulu and like go halfway through and watch from there.
Yeah.
Um, but no, I mean like this is not a movie I will revisit very often. So if a sequel comes out, yeah, I think I'll give it a chance, but it's not something I'm gonna be as excited for as I was going into this.
So let me ask you this. This has nothing to do with the review. I'm just curious. How does it make you feel to know that this is possibly the second best movie in this franchise?
It makes me scared to watch the rest of these movies. Oh god, that's gonna be an experience though when I go through all the
I am
Hellraiser
excited
movies.
to see what you think of the direct to DVD ones.
Oh no.
That'd be a fun video. We could do like a Hellraiser ranking or something.
Yeah, or just in general for like any other franchise, we can do like a ranking video.
I'd love to do a Friday one. I would love to see what your list looks like because you're wrong about all of
Yeah.
them except 6.
Well, that would be an interesting discussion just from our two completely different perspectives on that franchise. And
Yeah.
we could probably make that video pretty soon because I'm trying to go through all the ones I haven't seen yet. So,
Yeah, I have a general ranking in my mind.
mhm. Yeah, I'd have to think about that.
So I'm gonna
Um,
be honest, Torgo. I'm probably just gonna straight upload this. I don't feel like we rambled too much except for the end here, and that's whatever. It's at
sure.
the end. People can shut it off.
I mean, it's good timing anyway. Like the movie just came out today, so
exactly. Got to get those clicks.
yeah, relevancy.
But as always, Torgo, it has been a pleasure or pain, depending on your perspective.
Yeah.
Um, and we will be back soon. The Decades of Horror is going to be a little different this year because I haven't had the motivation to get everything scheduled. So I'm kind of going by when people are available. So we'll probably may not get to all of them. It just depends on Torgo, and he's very busy, which we completely respect and understand. He's a fraud.
I mean, that's true, but for different reasons.
But we will see you guys next time, and let us know what you thought of Hellraiser 2022.
See ya.